So often, women receive a threat letter or journalists receive a defamation threat letter, and that's enough to silence them.
Thank you so much for being here and congratulations. I mean, obviously at Variety we've covered this topic extensively through the years, and it's been an interesting time, at least in our country, in our world, with such delicate matters. So thank you for, number one, for putting a spotlight back on this incredibly important issue. So let me start, Jen, with you. You have this incredible career, and how much would you say has been devoted to sort of helping women tell their stories, helping journalists publish stories in the world of Me Too?
Really, I was inspired by my grandmother, who is a survivor of domestic violence, who had told me one evening that she was depressed because she'd seen the statistics on violence against women hadn't improved since her time working in domestic violence refuges. And it was at that point I decided to devote a part of my career and a part of my legal practice to defending women's free speech and journalists' free speech. So since Me Too, it's taken up a large part of my legal practice, helping journalists break these stories, which are so legally risky to report on, helping survivors tell their story. But what I've learned as a lawyer and what frustrated me, which motivated me to write our book, How Many More Women, and motivated me to want to make this film, is that what you see in the public domain of the defamation cases, this avalanche of defamation cases we've seen since Me Too, is actually still just the tip of the iceberg. So often, women receive a threat letter or journalists receive a defamation threat letter, and that's enough to silence them. So many of these stories are going untold, which is not in the public interest.
Absolutely. Can you just explain for the layperson, how are NDAs weaponized? Or how are defamation suits weaponized against victims?
When a woman speaks out, in the post-Me Too world, we saw women break the cultural silence, speaking out publicly on social media, to the media, about their experience of gender-based violence. What we then saw is their alleged perpetrator bringing a defamation claim, saying, this is not true, it's defamatory, and I'm going to sue you for a lot of money for saying this about me. And women say to me all the time, but this is true, this happened to me, how can he sue me? And I said, well, he can sue you, you just then have to prove it in court. But it's very expensive to do so. It bankrupts most women. And the question I ask in the book and in the film is, what does free speech mean if you can't afford to defend it? And so many women are self-censoring because they simply can't afford to defend themselves. And the women who are able to defend themselves, the emotional, physical and financial toll that takes on their lives over many, many years is really taxing. And that's why I'm so proud of this film, in that it shows the very real personal impact that these legal cases have on women.
Absolutely. This is for both of you, but I think one of the most amazing things the film does, I mean, obviously you've got someone like Amber Heard, who is an incredibly public figure that has come to sort of represent, I think in a way, like she's sort of like the face of this defamation tactic, if you will. But some of the other women, everyday women, working women in government and journalism, one of your subjects, Brittany, it's just an incredibly heartbreaking story, a painful story. But if you would talk a little bit about what it was like to film that journey for her, I think would be great.
I think in any film, it's always an incredible responsibility to be trusted to bring people's stories to the screen, but that was really true for this project. And our priority was creating an enabling and safe environment where women could speak to us. The women that we've profiled have all had experiences with both the legal system and the media that have been really traumatizing. So we made sure that we were as low impact as we could be with our production approach. We shot all our interviews with one camera and really minimal equipment, and really handled that testimony with as much care as we possibly could, because we understood the risk that these women were taking in choosing to continue to speak to us despite what they'd already been through.
Absolutely. The thing that really shocked me in watching this film is how there are still so many tropes of being a woman accuser in the public eye. Like Brittany said something totally heartbreaking, and I know this is delicate, I don't want to get it wrong. I think she said she had to appear in court, had to appear rapeable, but still credible, which just was like taking a punch to the gut. But do you find that that's still the case, that women have to present themselves in a certain way to even be a baseline believable?
First, I want to acknowledge Brittany's incredible courage in what she's been through in continuing her advocacy for law reform. continuing to speak out despite the horrendous treatment that she's suffered in the media and online. And I'm so grateful to her for participating in this film and telling her story, because this is the first sit-down broadcast interview that she's done since she first spoke out. And I know the toll that it's taken on her. You can see it in the film, and that she continually stands up to speak out is a testament to her. And the fact she chose to speak out has created a huge amount of law reform in Australia that she is absolutely responsible for, and we thank her for it. So I think whenever women speak out, they come up against male-centric stereotypes about gender-based violence. Why didn't she just leave? Why didn't she go to the police? It really doesn't understand the dynamics of particularly domestic violence. Women don't want to report their loved one to the police, the father of their children. But if they don't go to the police, then they can't be telling the truth. There's all these kinds of stereotypes. Women have to be the perfect victim. If they don't cry right in the public's eyes, then they can't be believed. It imposes these unrealistic and unattainable standards on women who are going through significant trauma. And every woman has a different reaction to trauma. But the public response to women who speak out does not allow for that. And I think that this film, and I hope that this film, will cause audiences to reflect on their own internal biases and to think differently the next time they see a woman speak out and they see the social media discussion around it, that they think differently and act differently and encourage others around them to act differently, so that we have this cultural change that's required to make it safer for women to speak out. Because the reality is that those male-centric tropes and stereotypes play out in courtrooms. They affect the way that juries approach cases. They sometimes affect the way that judges approach cases, and it denies women justice. So we have to have this conversation, better educate people, so that it's easier for women in our justice system and in the public domain.
Absolutely. One of the things I think we talk about most in our analysis of the entire Me Too movement is that it really was sort of cradled in Hollywood. And then, something like Time's Up and Me Too aimed to offer the lens of show business to support women in every facet of life, in corporate America, in law, and auto factories, that kind of thing. But given just how much I think, and again, I think there are political forces at work and cultural forces at work here, which I'd love your comment on, but do you think it's a responsibility of Hollywood to keep this in the forefront, and how would you like to see them move forward with that?
You want to start with that one? I'm happy to.
I think that's for you, Jen.
We saw this, and you see this in the film. You see footage in the film of everyone speaking out about how important Me Too was, how that this was going to bring a sea change. Well, where are they all now? Where were they when Amber Heard was sued? That was the question I had. Where were all these women who stood up in the Me Too movement when Amber Heard was facing this horrific online abuse? We've now seen it happen to Blake Lively. And I think because of the campaign we've seen run against Blake Lively, using the same PR team as Johnny Depp, that people are starting to say, hang on a second, there are these campaigns that are being run against women, these pylons that are happening. Maybe we need to start looking at this differently. This is not just about Amber Heard, this is about a much bigger cultural conversation around the way women are treated when they speak out. And there isn't sufficient attention being paid to this legal backlash. People sort of say, well, what happened with Me Too? And I said, well, it's being stifled by defamation claims. And historically, we've seen that. The civil rights movement was stifled by defamation claims at the outset. People forget that. So whenever we see social progress, social movements move forward, the establishment will seek to reassert itself and use defamation as a tool. And that's why it's so important that we highlight it and try to tackle the problem, because it is stifling progress for women.
It's crazy. Amber, I'm sure probably did not enter into this lightly, and I think, Jen, you said you've never, in all the cases you've tried, you've never seen this kind of public turnout, the kind of vitriol, the kind of, even there's a scene of her giving public remarks, I think, in Australia, and the cat calls and it was kind of demoralizing. And I think at one point, I think in a one-on-one with you or in an interview, she said that if it were up to her, she would never even speak her voice out loud again, which was insane for someone who actually does that for a living or used to. How does that hit you?
Amber was emphatic from the beginning that this film isn't about her. She lent her voice and her platform to this film and to the issue of defamation laws being used to silence women because she cares so deeply about this issue. And we're so grateful to her for doing that. And I think everybody can understand the courage that would have taken when you see what she's already been through over many years and how it's affected her life and her career, to continue to speak out. And talking about the responsibility of Hollywood, there's a really telling interview on a Dutch TV show with Amber where she's asked why she's talking about this, and she says, well, with great privilege comes great responsibility. And I think that really personifies how she's handled this challenge that's come into her life. And I think she's extraordinarily brave for doing that. But she didn't want this film to be focused on her. She just wanted to use her platform to help lift up the voices of other women. And I think that she's achieved that.
Absolutely. I wonder if the sort of fever around that case, did that present any physical production issues for you? Like just even being with her, shooting her every day, I can't imagine, like it's probably guerrilla style filmmaking.
We were very conscious of the ways that all the women that we feature in the film have to be aware of their own personal safety as a result of choosing to speak out about their experiences. And there was a lot of their lives that we're unable to share because of, these women have received death threats. Some have had to leave their country of origin and live in exile at times because of the just relentless sort of online trolling and in some cases real world and credible threats against their lives. So that was definitely a consideration and part of our commitment to making this a safe process for these women, as safe as we could.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So 2 quick questions to finish up. I want to circle back on Blake Lively very quickly. If I'm correct, the defamation suit that Justin Baldoni brought against the New York Times and Blake was dismissed, correct? Does that give you hope? Will that be kind of used as any sort of precedent, do you see?
Well, the first thing to say is when I saw the online space around It Ends With Us and the campaign that was clearly, well, it appeared to me that there was a huge campaign against Blake Lively. I observed it as a social media user. I was observing what was happening in the publicity around It Ends With Us and thinking, why is this so negative about Blake Lively? It doesn't make any sense to me. And because I had been at the centre of the online campaign against Amber Heard, I had been the subject of it. I received death and rape threats as Amber's lawyer. What she was subjected to was utterly horrendous. And then to watch it play out again with respect to Blake Lively, I said to everyone at the time, there's something not right here. This is not authentic online activity. There's something going on here. I don't understand what, but then months later it came out that she sued and accused Justin Baldoni of running this campaign, and he used the same PR agent as Johnny Depp. So for me, it's really important that we look at these cases. The fact that she was sued for defamation for speaking out about alleged sexual harassment, the fact the New York Times was sued for defamation for hundreds of millions of dollars for reporting that. I'm pleased that suit was thrown out because it's a real problem for free speech. That is what this whole film is about the chilling effect of these defamation claims, which will prevent journalists from speaking out and survivors from speaking out because they're scared of facing these incredibly expensive lawsuits. So the fact that that case was thrown out is a very good thing for free speech.
Absolutely. And then I just have to bring this up because I still can't get it out of my head. You say in the film that defamation legislation originated because too many men were dying in duels to protect their names. That is the dumbest, most patriarchal thing I've ever heard in my life. Is that true?
So historically, disputes about reputation were resolved by men in duels. And because men were dying from shooting each other in these duels to protect each other's reputation or to defend someone else's reputation, they introduced defamation laws. But again, at a time when women had no rights, we were considered the property of our husband or our father. And so the development of the entire legal system, you have to understand that historical aspect to the way that the law has operated. For many years, domestic violence was excused in the law. If a woman was seen to have provoked her husband, then his domestic violence was excused in the courts. And that's until recently.
Wow.
Rape within marriage wasn't acknowledged in the law until the last few decades. These cultural changes around legal changes and the cultural change that need to come, people forget how recent this is. And I think we will look back on this time and the way that defamation laws have been used and really question how society could have allowed this to happen.
or maybe bring back duels for just some of them. Thank you so much for this film, for the courage of your subjects, and we look forward to seeing it get sold and seen everywhere. Thank you so much. Silas.